Hello and welcome to the next installment of your video lecture. Today's video lecture is all about target marketing, market segmentation, different ways to segment a market, what makes a market segment attractive. We're going to talk about Val's framework, and I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to put a video inside of a video. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. I've said this before. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I've said this before. Everything in marketing starts with who are we going to do what to. That who is the basis for your segmentation. You could be just targeting a large segment like males, or a sub-segment. We're targeting male Hispanics in Rochester, New York. You can use a lot of different cuts for segmentation. You can use benefit segmentation, you can use demographic and geographic segmentation, and all types of things. The key thing is that the better you segment the market, the more you're going to be able to attract that market for pricing strategies based on your advertising strategies and all those types of things. Again, target marketing and market segmentation is one of the key concepts for any marketer. So with that being said, let's get started. As always, at the end of the lecture, you'll see a little assignment. Please write up a 1.5 to 2 page memo to your boss outlining the key points that you took away from this particular lecture. So with that being said, looking forward to seeing you on Monday. Take care. So as I said in the introduction, today's video lecture is going to be on market segmentation, target markets, identifying different target markets, and how to segment a market into different segments. Remember, in marketing, it always starts with who. Who are we going to do what to? And that's true with any advertising campaign. That's true with any product launch. That's true with any pricing strategy, any distribution strategy. We always got to figure out who, because your distribution strategy can be different depending on what segment you're going to attract. Your pricing strategy can be different depending on what segment you're trying to attract, as well as your product launch can be different depending on what segment you're trying to attract. And that's why there's so many different flavors out there. There's so many different colors of different things out there based on market segmentation. So a market segment is just that, a group of customers who share a similar set of needs and wants. Now the book, Kotler, has 4 different bases for segmentation. There's actually 6. There's geographic segmentation, there's demographic segmentation, there's psychographic segmentation, behavioral segmentation, there's benefits segmentation, and there's usage segmentation. Now, Kotler doesn't talk about benefits and usage segmentation. I'm going to, and I've added the slides in this lecture. So make sure that as you study chapter 6, you know that there's 6 bases of segmentation. Some people would call it 7 because some people say there's a geo-demographic segmentation. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. But anyways, a market segment is just that. What you're doing is you're breaking your market into specific small pieces so that different segments will be attracted to it. Now, with that being said, there are, and I've used a couple of examples already, there are products that are unsegmented. They go to the entire world the same way. There's really 3 products that I can think of that are unsegmented. One of them is Coca-Cola. It's the same product the world around. Now, they do segment it a little bit because they have different sizes. You can buy a 2-liter bottle, you can buy a can, you can buy a 12-ounce bottle, I guess, or what have you. But pretty much, Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola the world around. Starbucks. You can walk into a Starbucks in Rochester, and it'll look like the same Starbucks in Bratislava, Slovakia, or in Paris, France. Believe me, I've been to all 3 of them. They go to market the same. Very little segmentation. And then the other one, there's very little segmented. And it's only really segmented slightly, and that's by the apps. So I wouldn't really actually call that. And that would be the iPhone. The iPhone, Apple The iPhone stores here are very similar to the iPhone stores in China or in continental Europe. So those are three products that I can think of that are really unsegmented. The rest of the products that you see are segmented based on one of those 6 market segmentations. So let's start geographic segmentation. Geographical units can be a region of the country, the Northeast. It can be a state. It can be a city. The geographic segmentation can be north versus south, east versus west. There's all kinds of different geographic segmentations out there because products are going to be different in different areas of the country. For instance, you go into Florida, you don't expect to buy a winter jacket or a snow shovel. You can find them, but you don't expect to buy them. I remember I walked into Florida and I was looking for some long slacks because I had to go out to a restaurant that night. And I went into a department store looking for long slacks. And there was very few to be found. And I said, don't you have your winter stuff out? And this was in January. And I said, this is our winter stuff. Nobody wears slacks around here. Everybody wears shorts. So segmented based on the particular area or region. It could be because of weather. It could be because of the different behaviors in different geographic segmentation, etc. Nielsen clarifies segmentation by calling PRISM. And what they do is, and that was what I would call geo-demographic segmentation, where they have different areas of the country that are the same. For instance, you could have a 12-year-old girl. A 12-year-old girl in California is going to be very different than a 12-year-old girl in Atlanta. So PRISM is really taking a demographic look by geography. So that's why a lot of people, instead of just calling it PRISM, they would call it geodemographic segmentation. Call it with what you will, but basically it's geographic segmentation. Demographic segmentation is really probably the first cut that everybody uses. Generally speaking, the first cut that everybody uses in demographic segmentation is gender. Men versus women. That's generally speaking the first cut. And then they look at other things like age. They look at income level. They look at race. They look at culture. They look at other things like that. But really the first slice in demographic segmentation would be gender, male versus female. And then the second one would be age. And that gets into generational segmentation. Now you can subset and sub-segment a market based on many demographic qualifications. For instance, you can say, all right, I want to segment the Hispanic population. And then I want to cut it by gender, males versus females. And then I want to cut it by age. And then I want to cut it by income. So a lot of those different things are all part of demographic segmentation. Some people split out generational segmentation. I don't. I feel it's part of demographic segmentation, but we're going to get into generational segmentation in just a minute. But what you see here, and in these bubbles that you see on the screen, that's basically the ways of segmenting a market demographically. So age and life cycle stage, for instance, there's a big difference between someone who is 50 and still have children in school and someone who is 50 and is an empty nester. For instance, my sister is 1 year older than me. She has 3 grandchildren. Her youngest is 27. And again, she's 1 year older than me. I have a 10-year-old. So there's a big difference in our lives right now, even though we're basically the same age. So age, life cycle stage, all those things are different cuts of the generation. You can't say that all, say, 49-year-old males are the same, because some 49-year-old males have kids in high school, And some 49-year-old males have, very young children. So they're going to be different based on that. And that's part of demographic segmentation. It's part of the life cycle and the life stage of demographic segmentation. Of course, again, the first cut is gender, male versus female. Even if it's a product that both of them would use, and there's a lot of products that obviously are different, clothing and shoes and things like that. But if you have a product that both of them will use, oftentimes they still segment it male versus female because they advertise different. The where it's offered is different and things like that. So even if you have a very similar product, both of them could use the same thing. It's still different. And then finally, income. Lots of products are segmented by income. You can think of different, and it gets kind of into psychographic segmentation, which is what we're going to talk about next anyways. But I've always said, what's the difference between a Mercedes-Benz and a Ford Fusion? About $60,000. But Mercedes is based on psychographic segmentation and income segmentation. They're looking after a higher class or a higher, not necessarily class, I didn't mean that, a higher income level than say a Kia or a Ford or something like that. Timex versus Rolex, they're looking, it's segmented differently. Even in men's clothes here, if you look at a Hickey Freeman suit versus a Men's Warehouse suit, you're looking at an income segmentation, even though both suits are very similar in style, in cloth, in cut, and things like that. So now you get into generational segmentation. Your book has really four. The silent generation, some people call it the greatest generation. Those would be people that were really pre-World War II. Your baby boomers were born in 1946 to 1960, 58, 60 somewhere. Your millennials are, some people call them Gen Y, some people call them millennials, and then Gen X. This slide here really kind of breaks it down a little bit further. They call it maturists. Some people call it greatest generation. Whatever you want to call, those are pre-1945, those are pre-World War II. Baby boomers, 46 to 60, as I said. Gen X really is 64 around there to 80. Then you got really millennials. Millennials are anywhere between 1980 and 95. I would consider all of you millennials. Very few of you were born previous to 1981, and I don't think any of you. Some of you were born after 1995. I would guess we've got some 96ers and 97s. I would even call people that are born in 99 millennials because they think differently and things like that. And then finally, you got Gen Z. And some people split up Gen Z in between what they would call really young and then what they would call tweens. And tweens would be someone who is still in high school in their teens, and some people would call Gen Zs those that are in college but were born sometime around 2000, 1999, 2000 or something like that. My son falls into that category. He was born in 1999, going into his junior year here at St. John Fisher, kind of on the cusp between millennial and Gen Z. I like this, and if you're going to study any of these charts, study this one. I really like this one. And remember, the years blur. This one says that millennials are 75 to 95. I think 75 is a little old. I would really say 80 to 95, and then Gen Z. But what I really like about this is it talks about the generational segmentation. And if you look down, it talks also about behavioral segmentation with family values and situations and values and attributes. And even it talks about the global events that have shaped this particular generation. For instance, with me, really what has shaped my generation is the fall of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Watergate scandal, I was a little young for that one. And the same thing with the Vietnam War. But the big thing was, you know, the Watergate scandal in the late 70s, and really the fall of the Berlin Wall, or the fall of communism, and the split up of the USSR, or what we would call the Soviet Union. Really has shaped our generation, whereas your generation, the millennials, have been shaped by rise of technology, and unfortunately, it is very true, but the rise of terrorism. You have never really lived, most of you have never really lived without the threat of terrorism, and that also has shaped Generation Z, although not so much because they were very young when the Twin Towers got hit. Whereas you guys were probably, you know, some of you were 5, 6, 7 years old, and that has shaped the way we do things. For instance, you know, going into sporting events, you've got to go through metal detectors, and airports and flying is very different. So again, if you're going to study a generational segmentation chart, you should study this one. And then, of course, also, as we mentioned before, demographic segmentation involves race, culture, religion, creed, and factoring in the norms, the languages, the nuances of different races, different cultures, different religions can be very lucrative for marketers as they launch new products, do advertising campaigns, and other parts of the 4 Ps of the marketing mix. Psychographic segmentation really goes to buyers being divided up by the way they think, the way they act, their lifestyle, their traits, their hobbies. For instance, a lot of sporting equipment is psychographically segmented for those that like to run, or for those that like to do yoga, or for those who like to ski, or something like that. They're very psychographic segmented. Lots of other different activities, concerts, events, and that type of thing are based on psychographic segmentation, and based on what people like to do, how they think, and things like that, their personality traits, what their hobbies are, their lifestyles, their values, etc. So under psychographic segmentation is a very important thing called the VALS framework. The VALS stands for values, attitudes, and lifestyles. VALS framework has 8 different types of categories of psychographic segmentation. VALS framework is groundbreaking stuff. Marketers use it all the time. I want to show you a video, and I'm not sure if I can do that or not. I've never done this before on a video lecture, but I want to show you a video inside a video if I can, and see if this will work for the VALS framework. Please pay attention to this video, and we'll go from there. Hopefully this will work. And here we go.
Hello class. Have you any marketing concepts that need explaining?
Professor Siegfried, what is VALS framework?
Well, Sarah, VALS stands for Values, Attitudes and Lifestyles. Is a proprietary research methodology used for psychographic market segmentation. Market segmentation is designed to guide companies in tailoring their products and services to appeal to the people most likely to purchase them. VALS was developed in 1978 by social scientist and consumer futurist Arnold Mitchell and his colleagues at SRI International. It was immediately embraced by advertising agencies. VALS draws heavily on the work of Harvard sociologist David Riesman and psychologist Abraham Maslow. The VALS framework gives more details about 8 demographic groups. First group are the innovators. These consumers are on the leading edge of change, have the highest incomes, and such high self-esteem and abundant resources. Their consumer choices are directed toward the finer things in life. Example would be prestige goods and services. Second group are thinkers. These consumers are the high resource group of those who are motivated by ideals. They are mature, responsible, well educated. Professionals. Their leisure activities center on their homes, but they are well informed about what goes on in the world and are open to new ideas and social change. They have high incomes but are practical consumers and rational decision makers. Third group are believers. These consumers are the low resource group of those who are motivated by ideals. They are conservative and predictable consumers who favor established brands. Their lives are centered on family, church, community, and the nation. They have modest incomes. Fourth group are achievers. These consumers are the high resource group of those who are motivated by achievement. They are successful work-oriented people who get their satisfaction from their jobs and families. They are politically conservative and respect authority and the status quo. They favor established products and services that show off their success to their peers. Fifth group are called strivers. These consumers are the low resource group of those who are motivated by achievements. They have values very similar to achievers but have fewer economic, social, and psychological resources. Style is extremely important to them as they strive to emulate people they admire. Sixth group are called experiencers. These consumers are the high resource group of those who are motivated by self-expression. They are the youngest of all the segments, with a median age of 25. They have a lot of energy, which they pour into physical exercise and social activities. They are avid consumers, spending heavily on clothing, fast foods, music, and other youthful favorites, with particular emphasis on new products and services. Seventh group are called makers. These consumers are the low resource group of those who are motivated by self-expression. They are practical people who value self-sufficiency. They are focused on the familiar family, work, and physical recreation and have little interest in the broader world. As consumers, they appreciate practical and functional products. The eighth group are called survivors. These consumers have the lowest incomes. They have too few resources to be included in any consumer self-orientation. They are the oldest of all the segments, with a median age of 61. Within their limited means, they tend to be brand-loyal consumers. So overall, the VALS framework is a useful tool to understand psychographic segments.
Thanks, Professor, for your explanation.
So hopefully you got a lot out of that video. I know it's kind of cheesy with the cartoons and that type of thing, but that's the best explanation of the VALS framework I can much better than I can do. And again, VALS is very important and it will be covered on the test. Behavioral segmentation is part of VALS and it's part of lifestyles. It's dividing buyers into groups based on their knowledge of products and their attitudes towards products. For instance, if you're going to buy a guitar, behavioral segmentation would segment different guitars into those that really know and understand and how to play the guitar versus those who are just beginners or those that don't have a lot of interest and they're buying it from somebody for somebody else. So behavioral segmentation goes into how someone behaves as well as what their buying patterns are. It takes a look at needs and benefits and takes a look at different roles, being an initiator, an influencer, a decider, a buyer, and a user. Please take a look at all of those that are detailed in your book in Kotler. Usage-related variables or user segmentation is based on whether you're a high user or not a high user of a particular product. Those comes to different sizes of products. For instance, you can buy a Coke in an individual can. You can buy it in 12 packs if you're a higher user. You can buy it 6 packs if you're a moderate user, etc., etc. So basically, different products are segmented based on how much people will use. And they're also priced oftentimes versus how much people use. The more heavy users usually get some type of a discount. The more loyal users get some type of discounts, whereas the less or the fewer users get really not much discount. This is one of the best ways to segment markets on a B2B basis. The other one is benefits segmentation, where you segment your market based on the benefits they sought. The best example I can come up with is insurance. You can buy complete coverage insurance, you can buy just collision, you can buy just life insurance, you can buy term insurance and all types of things. And different segments are offered different products based on the way that they're segmented. Skiing is the same way. Anybody that ever goes to Bristol Mountain, you can buy a 12-pack of tickets, you can buy a season's pass, you can buy tickets just if you're going to ski on Saturday night. There's all kinds of different packages based on the benefits that someone wants to use. The same thing with fitness clubs. You can join a fitness club and be a full member, and that enables you to all the classes, or you can just use the pool. You can just use a particular gym or something like that. So benefit segmentation is based on the benefits that a group is seeking, and they segment that group based on those benefits. So one of the things that we're trying to do as marketers, and this is a great, and I'm sorry, it's hard for you to see because of my image there, but if you take a look, brand A, 96% people are aware of it. Brand B, 97 people are aware of it. If you look, everything is okay until where it says ever tried. In brand B, 61% have tried, and in brand A, 46% have tried, and therefore you're most often used, and you can't see this because of my image, but for brand A is 6, and for brand B is 15. The difference, the reason why there's double the usage in brand A than there is in brand B is because more people tried it. And that's what marketeers are trying to do. We're trying to segment our market so more people try it. So the basis for segmenting a business-to-business market, most of all, it's purchasing approaches or usage segmentation. The other one oftentimes is geographic segmentation. Demographic, situational factors, personal characteristics really is secondary to number one is geography. Because remember, most advertising in B2B is what we call feet on the streets or sales reps. So oftentimes a B2B will segment it geographically first, and then secondly, they'll segment it by usage. The larger accounts usually get called on more often. They get deeper discounts and things like that, rather than the smaller accounts. And so basically, that's the best way of segmenting a B2B market. So now we come to the point in the lecture where we're going to talk about what makes a segment attractive. What makes a segment effective? See, one of the things that you got to remember is you got to remember that a segment has to be profitable. You can't segment your market so much that you can't make any money. And that's why it's got to be substantial, which is the second thing here. It's got to be measurable. You got to be able to measure your market and understand your potential and that type of thing. But the key thing is it's got to be substantiable and it's got to be accessible. You might have a substantial market in a very remote area and it's measurable, but the problem is you can't get your product to them. So the 5 criteria you see here: measurable, substantial, meaning you can make money at it. Accessible means you can get your product and you can access the market. Differentiable, which means you can differentiate this particular market from another particular market. And then finally, actionable, which means that they can buy from you or they have the power to buy from you, makes segment criteria effective and attractive. Now, we go even farther than that with Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces, he says, okay, beyond that, there's some other forces that make a segment attractive that we should go into or unattractive. First of all, this threat of intense segment rivalry. which means there's a lot of people already in it. It's a cutthroat market, and you're continuing to lower your price to try to stay in the market. And something like that makes a market or a market unattractive. The threat of potential entrants. I look at something like the craft beer industry right now. There are so many, it's starting to get saturated because there's so many craft breweries popping up. The barriers to entry are very little. It doesn't take a lot of money to start a craft brewery, and there's a lot of them, and there's not a lot of differentiation. The threat of substitutes. If there's other products out there that can substitute for what you've got, then that makes the market unattractive. If the buyers have all the power, that would make the market unattractive. As I said before, right now, buyers have a lot of power and marketers have very little. But with some segments, buyers have even more power because the product might be available at more places, and there's a big difference in price between things, between sellers, etc. So the buyers gain power that way. And then finally, the threat of suppliers gaining more power. And that's when something is, there's not a lot of it. Scarce, that's what I was looking for. For instance, plastics. Right now, commodity plastics, you can't make it fast enough for what people are using it for. So the suppliers in the plastic industry, those that sell plastic resin, have all of the power because they're at capacity and they can choose who to do business with. So the 4 levels of segmentation, you can have full market coverage. Coca-Cola, they go to the market, go to every market, kind of the same way. You could have single segment specialization where you're only after one particular segment. You can have multiple segment specialization where you go after multiple segments, but you might go after them with different products, different pricing strategies, different advertising strategies, different distribution strategies. And then finally, you've got individual marketing where you're going after an individual or a particular small, very subset of the market. Finally, as everything, there are legal and ethical issues. It's very difficult to segment the market based on price, especially if you're looking at economic and ethnic groups, because there's discrimination laws out there. There's vulnerable groups out there that are vulnerable to different marketing tactics and different marketing strategies. Children, for one, is a very vulnerable group, and therefore what you advertise, the products that you offer to them have to meet very stringent requirements. There's disadvantaged groups out there. There's minority groups where you cannot segment based on price because it's discriminatory. And then, of course, there's potentially harmful products. And we talked about children's products and those types of things. So as we segment our market, we've got to keep all those things in mind to make sure that, we're doing justice to our market. We are marketing in an ethical manner, and we are not doing anything illegal or immoral. With that being said, that is the end of our video lecture. Here's your assignment. Again, write in memo format to your boss, 1.5 to 2 pages, double space, 11-point font, with the key takeaways from this lecture. And please then turn it into me hard copy when we are together next. With that being said, I will say goodbye, and I will see you on Monday.